I caught my girlfriend turning off her location multiple times and lying about where she was. I eventually found out she'd been meeting up with another guy. When I confronted her, she claimed it wasn't what I thought and told me she had been assaulted. But the timeline, lies, and secrecy don't add up. Now I'm torn, confused, and unable to trust a word she says that I can't trust my girlfriend anymore. We had plans for the weekend with my family, who were visiting from out of town. She went to the mall with some guy she claimed was just a friend. He took her to his place, supposedly for a party. She turned off her location, and when I messaged her, she said she was fine but had turned it off so her parents wouldn't know where she was. She never told me her location. From what she eventually told me, the music was loud, and he tried to get her into his room, saying it was hilariously tiny. She went with him, and he started making sexual advances. She said she wanted to go home because it was late and her parents would be worried, but he pressured her into staying. That's coercion and assault. The next morning, I got a message saying she had cheated, but her friends told her it was rape. I messaged her, checked in, and offered to come over, but she said she was with a different friend, spending the day with him. I kept messaging, worried, until I stopped to avoid pressuring her. Work was a blur, and I got drunk that night to cope. While I was drunk, she called and asked me to come over, offering an Uber, saying she needed me. I told her I couldn't because I was drunk and had promised my family not to talk to her if they let me drink whiskey. She called again, upset that I was asking too many questions, and told me to just spend the next day with my family. The next day, she begged me to come over. By then, I had talked to my family, including my sister, who has been abused and raped by an ex. They all said she had broken my trust. In fairness, they're biased. They think she's abusive, and previous online posts I made about our relationship also led people to say I was being abused. I broke up with her, but she pleaded with me to stay by her side that night so she could finish a take-home midterm. She aced it while I sat there, working next to her. We talked and cuddled, and I thought things might improve. Some things did. My sister warned me that comforting her after breaking up would just pull me back into the cycle and hurt us both. I thought about all the times she had wronged me that I'd hidden from my family and friends. I yelled at them for being wrong, then slumped to the ground and wrote her a message. You didn't deserve to be raped. What he did was awful, and it's never your fault. But you went to his room alone after spending the day with him. You used to make fun of me for being oblivious. But even I would have seen that coming. You didn't tell him about me because you didn't want to seem complicated. You could have said your boyfriend was worried about you without explaining our whole relationship. You could have made it clear you were taken, but you didn't, even though you've complained to me about how men often only befriend women for sex. Again, none of this excuses rape, and I'm so sorry that happened to you. But that doesn't change that you cheated on me, not physically, but emotionally. My family doesn't know about so many of the other cheating adjacent things, and so many friends are telling me the exact same thing. When you called me, I melted at your voice and forgot it all. But our relationship died when you walked into that room. It should have died when you refused full exclusivity, and it should have died when you kissed that guy on our break. If I go over there now, I'll be betraying my sister and other relatives, when I promised so many times I wouldn't leave her again. Besides, there's nothing I, as your ex, can possibly do to genuinely support you right now, especially with how shattered my trust is. I'm sorry I made a promise to you I couldn't keep. The craziness didn't stop there. I spent the day with family, and that night, I went to my cousin's grandmother's 79th birthday. She and her husband were like surrogate grandparents to me. Her husband threw this huge party out of nowhere. That was the night I wrote the original post. 2 days later, he died. I was already a mess, trying to process what happened with my ex, wanting answers and closure, and dealing with a flat tire. Then he was in the hospital with guaranteed brain damage. And then he was gone. I basically fell apart that first week, skipping all my university classes and only going to work. I went to his vigil every night after he was taken off life support. My family wanted to keep him alive until out-of-town relatives could arrive. During this time, my ex found a way around my block by messaging me on Steam. She said she just wanted to tell me the full story and gave me graphic details of the rape. She specifically avoided telling me any information about the affair so I wouldn't find out who it was. However, by telling me her story, I pieced together that it was a guy she had been talking to when we first started dating. He had told her he had no interest in being friends when she chose me months before. This was the same guy she had gone on a date with and kissed during a break we took. I should have left her then, but out of guilt, promises, and what I later learned was a trauma bond, I took her back. She swore to block him and all that, but I was so numb and desperate for answers. She convinced me to talk in person for closure. She cried, begged, and promised. I sat there like a rock for hours, trying to leave several times, but she kept dripping out information just enough to make it feel like progress. Over the next week, I uncovered the full story. She had been seeing him in secret for the month before the incident, claiming it was all platonic. She put incredible effort into seeing him, even talking badly about me. What really got to me was that she would take the train into my city, where he also lived, and he'd greet her at the station. She stopped wanting me to pick her up from her city, 80 miles away, then shamed me for never picking her up, making it seem like she was sacrificing by taking the train when she was meeting her affair partner at the station. This was during her spring break, so she was in town for a week. She love-bombed me that whole time, presenting herself as a safe harbor in the emotional storm she had caused. I was 3 weeks behind on my classwork by then, and I was only productive around her, so I stayed, falling back into her trap. But then I saw her promises break, the mask slip. I started gathering my belongings so she couldn't hold them hostage. I began preparing myself mentally to leave. Then the emotional abuse started again, the devaluation, the gaslighting. I tried to speak up a few times, only to be emotionally attacked for a week. Then she realized I was leaving, and it flipped to gaslighting, claims of loyalty, and love. I remember sending her a message when she claimed I was presuming to know her mind by saying she didn't love me or wasn't loyal. I'm not a mind reader, but if your brand of loyalty involves betrayal and cheating repeatedly, I don't want that. Loyalty. I ended up compiling every unsent letter I had written to her into a 43-page document. I read through it all and did what she never could. I listened to my younger self. I felt his pain. I became the person he had needed for 7 months, someone who could truly listen. I supported him. I proved to myself that I could love myself and that I was enough. That was what gave me closure. Myself, not her. Closure never comes from another person, only from you. Then I cut contact more thoroughly. It's been a month and 3 days of no contact. She tried contacting me by using my phone number at CVS to send me a receipt, adding me on chess.com, and reacting to my Duolingo streak, but I just kept going. It was hard at first, but I got myself into therapy, where I went from medium depression to being completely cleared. I started attending Codependence Anonymous meetings and reconnected with friends and family better than ever before. I also realized that I was likely dealing with someone with comorbid BPD and NPD, especially since she would explicitly revoke her empathy and love at times, among many other things you can read about in my post and comment history. But she's not important anymore. What matters is that I took all that energy and love I had given her and put it into myself, and I'm doing better than ever. I'm on top of things and busy, but I'm loving it. I went from a 78 on my math exam at the beginning of no contact to a 106 5 days ago. I barely think of my ex anymore. While I'm not looking for romance, someone approached me the other day, and I had an amazing time with her, so I'm open to seeing where things go. Besides that, my sister's wedding is in 2 weeks. I've been incredibly busy illustrating for that, drawing for 8 hours today. My finals are at the same time, and I'm also pursuing a Microsoft contract, so life is amazing but exhausting. I'm driving out to the desert with my friend tomorrow, and he's going to introduce me to a bunch of motor and water sports, so I'm honestly really excited. Plus, I'm getting a ton of friends together on Sunday to meet up after a while. I thought I'd outrun the craziness, but that was naive. If the last few weeks felt like new beginnings, this past fortnight ripped open every old wound. I'm not writing for pity. Frankly, I'm tired of pity. But in the strangest of recent events, I feel the need to document it all for myself. After my last update, I was riding high. My friend and I took off for that desert trip. His idea of a vacation involved pre-dawn wake-ups and the kind of horsepower that rattles your jaw. But honestly, roaring out into the empty wilderness made me feel more alive than I had in months. By noon, after getting half mummified in sunscreen, I'd conquered my first quad ride. Only one near crash, which I'm taking as a win. The water sports came later, and I learned 2 things fast. Wakeboards don't care about your dignity. and falling into river water at 30 miles per hour hits just as hard as heartbreak, but the bruises fade quicker. I mention all this because I finally felt like I was moving forward, right? But the universe, or whatever you want to call it, has a wicked sense of timing. It started with a phone call, of course. A number I didn't recognize, late at night. I almost let it go to voicemail, but on a hunch, I picked up. It was her mother. She started out polite, almost friendly, but it became clear she'd tracked me down because my ex had told her just enough about what happened, portraying herself as a pure victim of the world's cruelty. Honestly, she seemed mostly concerned that I not add to her daughter's guilt. I wasn't sure what I could possibly add, but she pressed. She said, "You're refusing to forgive her. She's not sleeping. She's failing classes." I did my best to be compassionate but firm, explaining I wished her daughter nothing but healing but that we were no longer in contact. She persisted, eventually, asking if I would come to their house, the same house where, ironically, my ex used to sneak out from to see that guy. I politely declined. I'll be honest, after the call, I felt oddly unsettled, like this chapter wasn't as closed as I'd hoped. The next few days were a blur, finishing my illustrations for my sister's wedding, which was rapidly approaching, prepping for finals, and preparing for my first big pitch at Microsoft. I was genuinely stretched thin, but it all felt like a tidal wave of good stress until the night of my sister's rehearsal dinner. That's when I got an anonymous Instagram DM. No profile picture, one follower. "You think you know what really happened? Ask around." It read, "She told people you forced her into things." My stomach dropped. I remembered all the gaslighting, the manipulation, how she could twist facts with an unsettling ease. I didn't respond, of course, but it was tough to ignore. The next day, another message. "You're not the golden boy you think you are. A lot of people know it." Honestly, it made me sick. The paranoia crept back, and just as everything else in my life was going smoother than it had in years. At the wedding, I kept catching my reflection and thinking I looked tired, strained in every photo. But the ceremony was beautiful. My sister looked radiant, and for a few hours, I let everything else drift away. Then, of course, she tried to show up at the reception. She didn't make it past the lobby. My aunt caught her, all credit to my family's overpreparedness and suspicious minds. My ex left a note. "Sorry, needed to see you. Please, I'm begging." I wanted to crumble, to let the floor swallow me, just for a moment, because I realized she wasn't done pulling at the strings. Instead, I danced badly, hugged my family, and reminded myself over and over, "You're here now. You got through it." But when I got home later that night, I did check my phone history. My ex had made over 20 calls during the reception. The last voicemail was just heavy breathing, then a single whispered, "I'm sorry." For the first time since our final break, I had nightmares again, about being not believed, about everyone buying her version. I woke up at 4 a.m. and started writing a letter to myself this time, not her. I wrote everything I knew was true about what happened. I reread parts of that 43-page document just to be certain. I even reached out to some mutual friends, carefully, just to ask them what they'd actually heard. Apparently, she's been telling half-truths everywhere, that I abandoned her after her trauma, that I controlled who she could see. No one seemed to believe her fully, but enough doubt had been sown to make me queasy. But here's the wild thing. It didn't break me. Instead, something kind of snapped into place. I booked an appointment with my therapist, showed her the screenshots, played the voicemails. We talked for hours about control, about letting go of narratives I can't manage. She told me something I still turn over in my head. Abusers rarely want the relationship, they want the story. If you don't give them a new chapter, eventually they go somewhere else. That weekend, I went to the beach with some friends who had no connection to any of this. New friends, new circles, nobody who knew my ex or cared who she was. I spent the evening making a bonfire, laughing into the smoke, watching embers blow, and realizing how long it had been since I felt just okay. It sounds corny, but I actually watched the sunrise, lying between two friends who'd fallen asleep in the sand, and decided I would stop letting her inside my head. I blocked her new numbers, sent a message just this once to her mother saying I deeply hoped her daughter recovered, but I would not be involved now or ever. I deleted the document and archived everything else. I started saying yes to every invitation. My friend group started hosting weekly board game nights, and for the first time in years, I actually started winning ticket to ride. A few days ago, the girl I'd met before the desert trip messaged me again. She wanted to show me her favorite hidden cafe. We met, we talked, and for the first 2 hours, I didn't think about my ex or the note or the DMs, not once. So, this is all to say, I expected drama, and I got it, but it didn't destroy me. It's weirdly freeing once you survive the worst to realize you can keep moving, even if someone else is sprinting after you with buckets of old paint trying to mark your every step. At the end of the day, you still choose which direction to run. If you're reading this, wondering if you ever get past the spiral, here's the update I wish someone had written for me. It's not about finally being done with someone toxic. It's about rewriting the story so they're just an odd footnote. And eventually, you get to turn the page. If you'd asked me 2 weeks ago, I'd have told you I was finally reaching some kind of emotional summit. My days became routines, good ones. I biked at sunrise, hit meetings, sketched for longer than I ever thought I could sit still. Even my inbox, for the first time since this all began, was quiet. And then, because apparently the universe doubles. As a cosmic sitcom writer, things went from silence to absolutely unhinged. First, it was a package, not in my name but to my address, which technically even my ex shouldn't have. It was small, wrapped in a childish sort of way, as if someone had taken care to make it look cute. Inside, a plush toy goose, if you've read the old posts, you'll know, a tiny notebook with the first page ripped out, and 2 pink post-it notes. You inspired me. Don't hate me forever. There was a smear of lipstick, and I'm not proud to say I checked the scent just to confirm it was hers. I won't lie, I locked the thing in a box and slid it under my bed, where it still sits, mostly because tossing it felt like giving the drama more power than it deserved. After that, the truly bizarre began. I thought blocking her numbers and socials would be enough, but her proxies got creative. For about 4 days straight, friends started mentioning mutual acquaintances who'd had weird conversations with my ex. 2 were approached in person at cafes I frequent. 1, my oldest friend from high school, got a panicked late-night call. My ex crying, supposedly terrified about what I'd do next. My friend texted me, basically, "Dude, what is this?" I told him the truth, which wasn't all that entertaining. I'm living my life and refusing to engage in insanity. Things escalated again a few nights later when, returning from a midnight walk, I spotted a figure across from my place. Not close, just there, staring towards my building. She was gone by the time I reached the corner, but there was an envelope tucked into the bush by the entryway. Inside were 2 pages, her handwriting again, spilling everything out. Apologies, confusion, guilt, and then, weirdly, gratitude. There was a paragraph thanking me for showing her what a healthy relationship could look like, and a request that I meet her, not to reunite, but because she needed to return something important. That line set off every warning bell. I'd seen this move before, the mix of regret, flattery, and a reason to break no contact. I showed my therapist the letter. She just asked, "How does it make you feel?" And honestly, tired. Deeply, deeply tired. But I realized something as I tried to explain. Every loop she tried to make around me was getting thinner, weaker. It felt less like a chokehold and more like static. I declined the invitation. Instead, I sent a message to my immediate circle. If she contacts you, please don't engage. If she says I need help, I don't. I set up 2-factor authentication everywhere. My friend said he'd had his public Instagram followed by a new one-post private account named healing_together 394. The bio one of those vague, cryptic quotes about forgiveness. So I pivoted. Instead of running or locking down or analyzing, I just lived. And that's when real updates started. First, a professor I've been working with on a small grant invited me for coffee. It wasn't academic, just, "I've seen the light back in you lately. Glad you're back." I'd never thought I wore pain that plainly, but apparently, you can glow when you're finally not leaking emotional battery fluid everywhere. The girl from the cafe, things have honestly progressed in a way I didn't expect. 3 weeks in, it's not fireworks and slow-motion movie scenes. It's easy. We went to a nighttime open mic, and when she noticed me freeze up during a song that reminded me of my ex, she just reached over and squeezed my hand. No questions, no pressure. I told her in the car afterward that I appreciated that. She smiled and said, "I think everyone deserves their privacy about their pain, But when you want to share, you can. That was all. And here's where things veered. From messy breakup territory into maybe this is how healing actually happens. I found myself laughing deeply at stuff that had nothing to do with my ex. I realized I was actually learning to say no without guilt and yes without fear. She texted less and never tried to intrude. She met my friends for board games, gelled with them instantly, and this was my favorite. Absolutely creamed everyone. At Codenames. My friends joked afterward. If she's evil, at least she's strategic. That's growth, man. But the last week went straight out of the movie playbook. Apparently, my ex, stymied by everyone's refusal to play ball, finally tried to apologize publicly. She sent a message to the group chat for our old college club, a full-blown, multi-paragraph manifesto about learning from mistakes, hurting people you love under stress and trauma, and deciding to move forward by letting the past rest. Somehow, it struck the exact wrong chord. People who'd stayed diplomatically neutral for months began messaging me, some apologizing for doubting me, others asking how they should respond. Most said the post made them more uncomfortable than anything else. The club admin deleted the message and then, in a twist I still don't fully understand, issued a gentle warning about boundaries and unsolicited apologies. I didn't gloat. I just walked to the lake near my place that night and felt lighter then. I have in a year. Closure, it turns out, isn't a clean line you step over. It's 100 ragged little boundaries you enforce and reinforce until you barely remember why you needed them. My life now feels less about protecting myself from her and more about investing in everything else. I'm taking a certifying exam for that Microsoft contract next week, and my sister's honeymoon photos just came in. She looks happier than I've ever seen her. And me? I still have the plush goose in a box as a weird monument to getting past the weirdest era in my life. Sometimes when I look at it, I just think, thank God for endings. I'm writing again. I'm drawing for myself again. On most days, I just feel, dare I say it, at peace. About 6 weeks ago, I was finishing my part of the Microsoft contract. I passed the certification, by the way, 131/140. Yes, this is a humble brag, and prepping for an art portfolio review. My girlfriend, Mia, the one from the cafe, had become a regular presence. We weren't rushing, just stacking up good days, and that was more than enough. The drama had shrunk to a footnote. Then, midday, came the career bombshell. My professor, mentor, dropped out of a huge joint grant at the last minute for health reasons. All good, just wild timing. His stepping down shifted all our workload. Suddenly, I was the contact for vendors, the point person for IT, the person everyone complained to about slow lunch reimbursements and DocuSign logins. It pushed me back into exactly the sort of high-octane stress I'd used all year to keep my mind off the breakup drama. Except this time, instead of hiding in work, I started showing up differently. Real boundaries. I told my collaborators no, when I meant it, something the old me absolutely wouldn't have done. Still, there were weird ripples. One night after a sprint of back-to-back late meetings, I came outside and found a water bottle taped to the driver's side mirror of my car. No note. No hints, just a name written in Sharpie across the label, the name of my ex's dog. Creepy cute, wasn't really my genre at this point, but it was unmistakably her style. My first thought was exhaustion, not fear. I peeled off the bottle, put it in my trunk, and here was the revelation. I told 3 friends and Mia about it instead of keeping it inside to fester. I actually let people in. 3 of them said, "That's just cartoonish," and we joked about what other weird objects she'd send next. Guesses included a rubber duck, a single sock, and an apology carved into a potato. Nothing else materialized, but the potato idea lives rent-free in my group chat now as an inside joke. 2 weeks later, right as things started feeling boring in a good way again, I got a letter, like a literal handwritten letter, postmarked from an out-of-state address. Her aunt's, apparently. I only realized it was from her after opening it and reading 5 lines of disjointed apologies. Then a veer into how her therapist asked her to write the letter for closure. Keyline, I am not asking for forgiveness. I know that's not fair. I want you to know I'm in a support group now, really working on myself. There was a drawing. Goose again, this time with crutches, I kid you not. I didn't respond, didn't even show it to anyone except my therapist, who, after a long silence, sighed and said, Sometimes people are addicted to their own narrative of regret. The kicker. Later that week, I ran into her. Yes, her. At a new ramen spot. Total accident. I saw her first. Hair color changed. Hands shaking as she picked up her takeout. I almost turned to leave, but she spotted me. The air went stone heavy. She came over, and honestly, for a second, she looked normal, like a tired, stressed-out college student, not the chaos engine she'd been last year. Here's where it tumbled surprisingly off script. She didn't cry or demand closure or forgiveness, or even apologize directly. She just said, "You look well. You really do." I said, "Thank you." She said she was moving back home and had started a semester late, taking a gap to sort things out. There was a pause. Then she said, "You were the only person who ever believed I could be better. I'm sorry for making it impossible to be around me." Then she stood there waiting, but I just nodded. Then, before leaving, she smiled genuinely for what it's worth and said, "Really, I hope you're happy." And that was it. She left with her ramen and didn't look back. I got home and didn't feel shaky, didn't even feel angry or triumphant. I just felt relieved and very tired, like someone had finally set down a suitcase they'd been carrying up invisible stairs. The rest of the week almost glowed with boring happiness. Mia and I went to a food truck festival and got comically sticky. From honey chicken skewers. I aced the feedback for our big grant demo. My friends, emboldened by the creepy object saga, started leaving jokey objects on my desk. An origami beer can, a Lego goose, a hand-drawn certificate of surviving wild. Drama signed by everyone in crayon. Even my family relaxed at my dad's birthday dinner. For the first time, they didn't even ask about all that stuff. Last year, I realized my life had finally become about things not related to her. So here's where the story stands. The saga of my ex, my recovery, and her many proxies seems to have officially entered the benign aftershock stage. I don't know if she'll ever actually stop, if she'll send more notes, turn up with cryptic Instagram bios, or retroactively try to rewrite our old story. But I do know the impact is gone. Even when the past knocks, it has no room left to move in. For anyone who's still reading because you're in the thick of something similar, here's a weird, honest truth. Sometimes the real and isn't a confrontation or a blow-up or even perfect catharsis. Sometimes the final update is you living well enough that your past becomes not just a footnote, but a story someone else tells about their old life. My old life is over. I'm in the new one now, and I'll keep the Lego goose and the certificate of surviving drama nailed to my wall, just in case I ever need a reminder that yes, it really, actually does get better.